We still can't hear you, Doc. No, we can't hear you. The clock is moving. Can anybody hear Dr. Chibanzi?
No, not yet. Maybe you can remove the earpiece because earlier we could hear you. No, we can't hear you yet, Doc. Oh, goodness.
Dr. Chibanzi, you're okay. Prof. Mathai, are you with us?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, Madani. Now, technology is playing around with Dr. Chibanzi.
Yeah.
I know you've just joined us, but just for your own sake, we'll now have you speak first in support of the motion that this House supports the motion that politics is too hot, a topic to be left to politicians. If you're ready to speak, Prof. Mathai, you have 6 minutes starting from now.
Thank you, Dr. Jenga. I'm happy to start, and thanks for the invitation, everyone, and thanks for the organizing team. I think I've turned off my camera because I'm sitting in the car. I do actually support this motion. Politics is too hard to be left to politicians. When I joined the medical school, one of the things they told us was that we should leave politics to the politicians and concentrate on medicine.
Hi, I'm having an issue.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, so nobody else matters.
Okay, thank you. No, because I can hear somebody speaking in the background.
Ignore them and proceed as though they don't exist.
Okay, thank you. My 6 minutes. Okay, and for me, later, I realized that was a mistake. I listened. It was as if our business was just to concentrate on the health of the people outside the context in which they lived. And so I did not make any efforts to go into politics and into any political position, even as a student. And I believe that was a mistake, because later I realized there is nothing that you can do outside of politics. You cannot afford to be a professional in any field and be apolitical, because the decisions that are going to be made for you will be made by people who don't even understand what your profession is about. The profession of medicine is practiced within the context of a political climate, or decisions are made. Okay. And because of this, decisions have been made in this country that have been catastrophic for our profession. We have ongoing disasters because in our profession, you're not able to practice what you learned or what you would like to do ideally, because of you are limited by the regulations and the policies that are made by politicians who do not understand. So if we cannot be in there, put our hands up and say, no, this is not the way we work, this is the way we would prefer to have it, then we are kind of lost. We are lost because we will be doing things, you're dissatisfied, you're working in an environment where you think I could do better, but there are certain limitations that have been set because of the political system. So to think that you can be a professional without getting involved in politics is a mistake. So we need to be in there. We need to be making decisions for ourselves, or at least saying to the politicians, we are here too. We are also political. So, and I think that is, I don't know how my 6 minutes are doing, but that is my...
2 minutes left.
I can donate, eh?
Oh, actually, yes, you can donate to your colleague or to the general public.
How many minutes do I have?
Now you have 2. You still got 1.5 now.
Oh, okay. So in other words, my concluding statement is that this is something we need to be teaching even when young people join medical school. You have to be political. You cannot afford not to. You cannot afford to have other people who sometimes, and I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything, sometimes have a much lower level of education than you have, making decisions about where and how and when you should work and how you should do it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. You've got 30 seconds. You can donate to Dr. Chibanzi or to the next speaker, or to the moderator. Our next speaker to oppose the motion is our very own Dr. Sylvia Kimotho, who is a seasoned debater, starting at 8:46 right now. Dr. Kimotho?
Hi, Chairman. Our strategy was Dr. Neil Horn to go first, kindly.
All right, Dr. Horn, you've been nominated to go first. I don't know what your strategy is. Go ahead, Neil.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this. I have to say I have 1 or 2 conflicts of interest, but I don't want to waste time on that. Let me make a few points, and I want to thank Dr. Matai for her points, because I think I agree with her, but the problem is that her points are against the motion. I think that the motion is saying politics is too hot to be left to the politicians. Well, what we know is that in every country there are processes, so that politicians are people who we elect to do their job. If they don't do their job well, they must go, and we see that happening. If somebody fails at their job, they don't get re-elected. If they do a really bad job, they get discharged, dismissed, or even impeached. So there are processes to address bad politicians or failed politicians who've somehow been so popular as to be elected. But before we go into this too much, I want to beg the audience to keep the discussion beyond the borders of Kenya, because politics is a global phenomenon. Some of you watched the recent American election and will have been heartbroken to see that the American electorate made bad decisions in some cases. But I guess they have a chance to get rid of that person or to impeach them if they must go. And it's quite right to say that we must get involved in politics, but that doesn't mean that politicians shouldn't be running the country. There are many politicians. There are those who are elected, and there are other political activists who I would call politicians. When I grew up in South Africa, we had apartheid. We had the resistance movement. That was a political organization. It was a political movement. The people who were leading it were politicians. They didn't happen to be in power, but they were activists. So we can't leave politics only to elected people. We must also include activists and the whole population in our discussions about politics. So who are those activists? Well, it seems like the church, who used to run all countries, still pushes themselves into politics. Newsreaders and news stations push themselves into political discussions, in fact, probably lead a lot of the political discussions. They are political animals. And then there are other leaders. So, for example, the Gen Z movement has, I don't think it is a leaderless movement. There are leaders within it. Those people are politicians. The fact that they haven't been elected or formed themselves into political organization doesn't make them to be not politicians. Then the last point that I want to make is that even if you are an elected politician, you would normally take advice. If you're not a doctor, and you're running the Ministry of Health, and you don't know what doctors should do or how they should do it, you have a whole team of advisors and people who are willing to help. But if you don't listen and you make bad decisions, then you have to go. And the last point that I want to make is that the political space is a constantly shifting cloud. So let's define our terms as we go into the debate. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time. Got a long list of points.
2 minutes, but you can donate the 2 minutes to the moderator, who will give it to the public during the debate. Thank you very much, Neil.
Let me make one more point before I donate. Okay. The other definition of terms that I would beg the audience to do is to understand what politics is. And it's not only about running government and having a budget and that sort of thing. It's also about balancing human rights and resources. And unfortunately, I think we lose sight of that. So in some countries, politics is about left-wing versus right-wing. In other countries, it's about north versus south, east versus west, Christians versus other religions. So I call that a kind of a sectarian or tribal politics. So it's important not to judge the whole political space based on what we might see in our own region, where people are voted because they're popular and they spend millions of dollars on making themselves popular. What we need to guide politicians to do is to take on agendas, and as they do that, there'll be a cost, won't there? If they take on the agenda about pushing mental health as a political priority, then the surgeons will complain. Imagine if they started paying us a fair fee from SHA for our consultation time. People would be saying, why would psychiatrists get paid more than other doctors? So I agree, we have to enter into a political space to inform politicians what to do.
Thank you very much, Neil. Your time is up. Thank you. You will have the right of reply, obviously. We now invite Dr. Chibanzi Mwachonda to speak in support of the motion at 8:53. Dr. Chibanzi, your time starts now. No, we still lost you. No, we can't hear you. Technology is playing tricks on us. No, and we could hear you very well before, Dr. Chibanzi, during our strategy. Maybe you want to go on your phone or some other little device. The moderator has the discretion. Yeah, go on. No. No. Okay. The moderator has the discretion in crisis to make decisions. So, Dr. Sylvia Kimoto, you will go next, even as Dr. Chibanzi sorts out technology. Dr. Kimoto, okay. Yeah, it's 8:54. Your time starts now.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm on the opposing side, and I begin with a question. Are there good politicians or leaders? What does a good politician look like? For example, Angela Merkel, who was a German chancellor between the years of 2005 and 2021, who is termed as a scientist who became a world leader. She's known for her pragmatic leadership style and the ability to navigate complex crises. She was re-elected 3 times during her tenure, and during her term, she maintained high public trust and was instrumental in preserving the EU during turbulent times. So clearly there are good politicians, and what we should focus on is electing good people who are pushing our agendas. Why should we leave politics to politicians? Politicians, ideally, they are people who are well-versed in the complexities of governance, law, public and foreign policy. They have the knowledge and expertise, and as well, they can empanel people who are like technocrats, which means decisions will be made by people who fully understand the scope of the impact. Politicians are elected representatives who we vote for, and they're accountable to the public. They're subject to scrutiny, elections, and the checks and balances of democratic institutions. This accountability ensures that they act in the best interests of their constituents or face the consequences at the ballot box. Also, they're subject to ethical standards and oversight, which ensures their actions are transparent and accountable, reducing the risk of corruption and misuse of power. As alluded by Dr. Horn, we rely on medical doctors for medical advice and engineers for infrastructure. We also rely on politicians for governance. Their specialization in governance allows them to focus on the nuances of policy making, which may be too complex for the general public to manage effectively. Ideally, politicians are also people who are trained to handle crises, whether social, economic, or environmental. Their experiences and access to vast resources enables them to make informed decisions quickly and effectively. They're also people who are able to maintain and negotiate international relations because they're trained in diplomacy, which helps foster peaceful and beneficial relations with other countries. So elected politicians have the mandate of the people, which gives them legitimacy. The public trust is essential in implementing policies and making decisions that affect the entire population. As well, they have to balance and represent diverse groups and interests within society. They're tasked with balancing these interests and making decisions that reflect the will of the people. This ensures all voices are heard and considered. For example, if there are specific representatives who should take care of minority groups, for example, the youth and the women, our role is to ensure we are putting the right people in places of power so that they are able to forward our interests. As Dr. Horn said, it's important to sort of separate our local politics because of the issues our local politics are, and look at other democracies who have been able to have good leaders who take care of the interests of their people. For example, in Scandinavian countries, these are countries which do very well with low corruption rates and high voter turnouts. These are leaders who prioritize the interests of the people, and we can see that in their healthcare system and in their education systems. I don't know how I'm doing time-wise, Chair.
You have a minute.
Okay. I can donate that to the moderator.
Oh my goodness me, thank you. The moderator is a very, very rich man now. Thank you very much. All it means is that we'll have lots of time for conversations amongst the general public, which is always a good thing. Dr. Chibanzi Machonda, I hope technology is favoring you now at exactly 8:59.
I've changed devices. I hope I'm audible now.
You're audible and you look very well. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so without further ado, I'd like to start with the opening statement of a statement by Dr. Rudolph Virchow, who said that medicine is a social science and politics nothing but medicine at a larger scale. And this is to bring it into context in what my colleague, my professor, my mentor, my teacher, Dr. Madhai, has said about us not being involved in politics. Bring it into context even further is in the health space in Kenya and even globally, political decisions are what determines what happens in this space. I'll use two examples locally and then one globally. The first local example is the petition by one of our very own Professor Lukoya Atwoli on decriminalization of suicide. He petitioned Parliament to decriminalize suicide, and we understand that suicide has a mental is an issue that we as mental health practitioners handle every day, and it's something that is very key in the society. And the section 226 of the Kenyan Penal Code actually criminalizes suicide. So anyone who dies by suicide is deemed to have committed a criminal offense. But is it really a criminal offense? From a health perspective, it's very clear that there is more than meets the eye. It's not a criminal offense. And so if we leave politics to politicians, it means then we are not taking action, which is political action as healthcare practitioners and professionals, to influence political decisions that really matter. And that's why we cannot leave politics politicians. We do hope that this petition presented to the National Assembly of Kenya will actually change and lead to an amendment of the law. The second example I'd use is the Mental Health Task Force report by our very own, the chairman and moderator, and also Professor Lukoya Toli, that the president had to actually appoint a task force so that they look at the mental health in the country, and from that decisions were made. The report actually gives very solid points that now need to be taken up by the politicians and also the political class in terms of ensuring that whatever is legislative needs to be done, whatever is policy needs to be done. Globally, I disagree with the global example. I disagree with Dr. Horn on that we have to allow, we can't let it just be politicians. We can have to leave it to politicians. And the reason I'm saying this is the US election is a very good example. The US as a country has what we call the US aid that has a very significant impact on our healthcare system in Kenya because of the donor support that they bring to the country. So if we allow to the politicians to play this role completely without our involvement, then what are we saying? We're allowing them to make decisions for us that will actually determine what happens in our country. And a good example is the research that is being conducted in the country, the interventions that are being done in the country. If we do not get involved as politicians, even at that global level, then it means, as professionals, it means that we'll allow people to dictate what we allow in our space. I disagree with Dr. Kimotho, Sylvia, on the fact that politicians have interests and they can balance interests. I think there are very good examples of politicians who take care of their interests first and not the interests of the public. And low and middle income countries are a very good example of that, that politics is basically more like a business. Remember, in politics, funding for political campaigns is by business people, is by people who have the financial muscle. And that determines the interest of the politicians when they get into office. And we cannot sit back and say that they will take action based on our interests or based on the greater interest of the greater public. The other point that I don't know how I'm doing in terms of time.
You're doing very well. You have another minute and a half.
A minute and a half, yeah. So to finalize this, one of my last points is that we as professionals have to take up the role of making sure that political decisions that are made must have our input, and that means that we have to get involved in the politics of the day, either by supporting candidates, giving our memoranda, giving our vision of what we want, for instance, in the healthcare space, and give it to them and support those who will actually align to our interests. If they do not align to our interests, then we have no role supporting them, because if we do not support them, they win in the political contest, they will implement policies that are against us. I think that is where I'd like to stop my contribution at this point. I submit.
You're a very generous not politician. You're a very generous man. You have donated half a minute to the general public. I would now like to open the debate to the general participants. At the beginning of your presentation, I would encourage you to say, I stand in support or I stand against today's motion, so that it's clear the point that you are about to make. Now, before that, Zawadi, you had some people who had sent in some questions in advance, or who wish to make comments, not necessarily questions.
Yes,
Zawadi? Go on.
yes, but a lot of the people who had placed request to have the mic are not in attendance with us right now.
Okay, they have chickened out, not a problem.
Yeah,
That's a very common thing when things are too hot. So we'll invite comment. Yeah, anybody with a comment? Put up your hand and you'll be.
However, I can see Dr. Musheru. I don't know whether she has a comment to make.
All right, Dr. Musheru. Unmute yourself and make your comment, please.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Very good morning, Doc.
Yes, I'm in support of the motion that politics is too hot to be left to the politicians, because it's my belief that if you're not on the table, then you're on the menu. So I still believe that we have a role to play and we should be directly involved in all the decisions made for us and about us, about those we care about and those we treat on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Any other comments? Unmic yourself, unmute and make your point, please.
Doc, we have a question here.
Go on.
So the question reads that, would it be then prudent to separate politics from governance, such that then the general populace can be included and participate in governance and separate themselves from the murky waters of politics?
Okay, I can see the proponents and opponents are making vigorous notes. They will answer that question. Any other question or comment?
There's also another question. Let me read it out. So it reads, political systems influence medical decisions. Is that true for Kenya and the rest of the world? And I think that comment should end with, so what then would be in it for, like either supporting or being part of politics?
Thank you very much. Again, I can see them making comments, or rather making, yes, thank you. Anybody else?
We have another question. So the question reads, are citizen-led initiatives more accountable than elected officials? So all of these are just questions to help support the conversation.
Thank you very much. Any other question or comment?
Dr. Joseph here.
Sorry?
Dr. Joseph, I'd like to make a comment.
No, you can't, because you're the special guest.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Now everybody knows who the special guest is. So just yeah. Right.
And then there's another one here. There's another comment. Leaving politics to politicians solely generates a culture of corruption and inefficiency. It is the citizenry that leads to accountability and sustenance in the country.
Okay, so that's another point that will be addressed by the opponents and the proponents. Thank you. Right. Any other comment?
Yes, I have received one other. So should technocrats replace politicians in critical decision-making areas such as health and climate, as has been demonstrated by the example given on Dr. Njenga's input and Professor Lukwe's input in our Kenyan platform?
Okay, we'll have a comment on that point. Any other question? I had seen Dr. Sumaya. I thought I saw you on the call. Maybe you have a comment to make?
Thank you, Chair, for that opportunity. This was quite a very interesting conversation, and I would like to support the motion that as medics or as doctors, we can't really shy away from politics. We can do both. We can do better than the politicians because the decisions are made by politicians. They can actually affect us as professions. They can affect our patients. And like what Dr. Chibanzi said, the issue with suicide, or like the conversation we had about cults, are these people who need to be taken to court, or are these people need mental assessment and help? So in my opinion, we can't run away from politics. Every day we have to deal with it. Thank you.
Oh, I see we have a guest from a different part of, well, Dr. Raufa, maybe you have a comment. Tell us where you are and what you're doing at this time. Dr. Raufa? You're muted.
Hello, good morning.
Where are you?
Well, I'm glad to have gotten an opportunity to join all the way from the UK. We're about 3 hours behind, so it's quite early on this side. I do support the motion that we can't ignore politics. It's a part of every day, it's a part of our lives. It does affect our careers, it does affect pretty much everything. So we need to be aware of what is happening, and we need to advise where possible. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Any further comments, Awadi?
Just a sec, let me look at the chat box. So in the chat box, we have a question. So I'll just read it out. This conversation was indeed great. I'm in support of the motion. However, there's just one question. How safe are we, especially when it comes to expressing our own opinions as people? Because we have seen people who have been silenced by speaking out. How can we express our views then without feeling threatened?
So there are those who are afraid of joining into this activity because they feel threatened and unsafe. Thank you very much. All right, all those are important. Go on.
There's also another one. So there is need to participate in politics. So this is someone who supports the motion, says that there's need to participate in politics just to assimilate psychoeducation across all spectrums to achieve balance in policy making and the well-being of the population.
Thank you. I see, yeah. Victoria Rika, I see you in the call. Maybe you have a comment one way or the other. Victoria, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. Can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I go with supporting the motion because I think I like what Dr. Moshero said, that if you're not on the table, then you are on the menu. So I fully support that we should actually be participants in what the politicians are up to. I completely support it. Thank you, Dr. Ari.
Thank you. I see Dr. Muchangi is with us. Eric Muchangi. You're muted. No, Dr. Muchangi is unavailable for comment for some reason. John upstairs. John Bao, where do you stand? You're muted, John.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'll also be in support of the motion. I believe most of the matters affecting mental health and health in general, if we do not participate, then again, like Dr. Moshero said, we might end up being on the menu. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Did I see Wilma, Dr. Wilma?
Thank you, Chairman. I stand in support of the motion. I think politics is something that affects all of us as doctors, as people, and we can't really run away from it. And especially as doctors, because we have an insight into how it affects even our patients' daily lives. Like Dr. Chibanzi talked about the issue of criminalizing suicide. So I think we really can't run away from considering politics. And yeah, I stand in support of the motion.
Thank you very much. I think the poll is already leaning in one particular direction. I can't say which direction because I'm the moderator. Does anybody else have any point to make in support or against this particular motion? Just
Mr. Linus Oigi has raised his hand.
Okay, Linus, go ahead.
Thank you, Zawadi. Thank you, Dr. I would like to start by saying that I fully support the motion, although I'd like to propose maybe a way of supporting the motion or what we should do as professionals. I think sitting on the fence would be a best way for us to effect change without us being partial to any side of the political divide, which oftentimes can be very, very polarized. My example would be regarding the not the Kenyan, but the American situation, and a topic that has really been on the forefront of our discussions over the last couple of years since 2017, which is transgenderism. On the left side of the political divide in America, they're fully in support of transgenderism, including the transition of children, and oftentimes, and on the right, they are fully against it, even for people who should be supported to transition, even adults, they're fully against the transition of adults or offering them gender affirmative or affirming care. I think neither side is right about that conversation about what should be done. They're partially right. I think the best thing that we can do as psychologists is to, or professionals in the mental health field, is to stay in the center. And how do we stay in the center? By making sure that all our efforts or all our actions are driven by data and science and research, so that we avoid being dragged to either side, which oftentimes can be very polarized, and then we lose our power or our ability also to effect change. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other comment? Thank you very much. Did I see Dr. Gumbo on the call? Dr. Gumbo? No. So, did you have any other comment? Before
No,
invite.
As at this moment, I don't have more comments coming in.
Thank you. Okay. It's probably time for us to invite the special guest who has 5 minutes to make his comment, starting now. Dr. Joseph.
Thank you, Dr. Frank, and everyone who has been involved in organizing this. This has been a wonderful debate, and it's very interesting, especially at this time we are as a country and globally. First and foremost, a politician is a person who is professionally involved in politics. That means if you are to hold someone accountable to their political activities, that does not necessarily make you a politician or does not necessarily make you involved in politics. We know politics is probably an activity or activities that are associated with creating governance and also sharing power. And we know that governance since time immemorial has required that there is order, and order is brought by constitutions. And due to this order by constitutions, if we were to involve all people in probably taking stands and taking sides, if we need to be involved in politics, then there would be lack of order. And that would lead us to think that probably we might need to leave this politics to politicians, considering they are also knowledgeable and they understand the political process more than the ordinary person or professionals. However, on the other end, on those who support the motion that we shouldn't leave it to politicians, we know that professional unions, professional associations, and the civil society are involved in politics heavily. And that means that as professionals in mental health and medical in the medical fraternity and all other professions, we end up by us being members of those associations and unions involved in politics. So my question would be, if we are to be involved in politics, does that mean that we need to take a political stand? So if you are a specific doctor or psychologist or healthcare provider, do you stand up, or probably even an association, do you stand up and say that I take this side or I take that side? And that is where now the deep end of political involvement is. And this might in itself affect and cause friction between us as professionals and also the political world. So thank you very much for having this conversation, because it helps us understand that we might have to not necessarily take a side, because either or, both sides make a lot of sense. I don't know if that's enough from my end.
No, that's perfectly in order. Thank you very much. I will allow any other comment before encouraging the final comment from the proposers and the opponents.
Good morning.
Identify yourself.
My name is Dr. Gombo.
Yes, Doc.
My comment would be that politics cannot be left to politicians only. Even as healthcare workers, we are involved day to day. The patients we see, the policies they make, the rules which are out there. So we cannot sit on the sidelines. We would have to be actively involved. That would be my comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comment? Zawadi, I can see there's a comment in the chat. Please tell us what it's about.
Just a second. So the comment reads, considering the significant impact of political decisions on public health, how can you ensure that health policies are informed by evidence-based medical knowledge and reflect the diverse needs and values of society, rather than being solely shaped by politicians and their political agendas? Ultimately, the entire society must be involved, hence my support for the motion.
Thank you. Any other comment before the closing comments?
Yes, there's another big one here. So this one reads that we need to be part of politics, even from the head of state to any other politician. Sometimes they end up having outbursts to the general public, indicating that some of these things overwhelm them. Therefore, they do require a place to talk. And as a citizenry, therefore, then we also need to support. And we have our brothers from the retreat being in support of the motion. So one of the representatives says that if you do not participate in politics, we risk politicians coming up with policies and regulations that are not reflective of our needs and of those we work with and work for. But for us to be involved in politics, we need to acquaint ourselves with how politics runs in terms of how to draw bills, what is happening in other countries' geopolitics.
Thank you. Any other comment? Right. The moderator would like to make his own comments, not in support, not against, but as a matter of clarification. But before the moderator takes that position, we have a Dr. Kimberly Kariuki who seems to want to make a comment. Dr. Kimberly? You may unmute yourself, unless I'm mistaken. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Clearly so.
Yes, I just want to say that I'm in support of the motion, and I agree that medical professionals should definitely be present when such salient important matters are being discussed and certain policies are being passed. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Kariuki. Any other comments? because we are really coming to the end. Okay, the moderator would like to make the following 2 comments. The first, by way of clarifying and definition, which neither side deemed appropriate to define, because it's perhaps obvious to most of the people, is that when you talk about politics, one is talking about activities that are associated with governance of a people or an area like Nairobi or Lavington or whatever it is. So any activity that is associated with the governance of Kirinyaga or of Nairobi or of wherever it is, America for that matter, that is politics. So this motion is about the governance of particular areas, irrespective of what it is. And what we are being invited to make a comment on is the extent to which or otherwise we as medical or mental health workers should or should not be associated with. The second point, which has not been raised and which is not in support and which is not against the general debate, is a very interesting book that I'd like to draw the attention of the audience to, by an old friend of mine called Jonathan Davidson, a professor of psychiatry at Duke University in North Carolina. And the book is called Downing Street Blues. Downing Street Blues, A History of Depression and Other Mental Afflictions in British Prime Ministers. So what Jonathan Davidson found is that about 60% of British prime ministers from the beginning of time have had a mental disorder of one sort or another, some during the currency of their time as prime ministers. Examples include people like Margaret Thatcher, who had a form of dementia towards the end of her life. The other one is of the wartime Prime Minister, Sir Winston Churchill, who had bipolar mood disorder and also had challenges with alcohol use and so on. Are these areas that are legitimate for this kind of conversation, or are they not? Are we entitled, are we required, as Dr. Jonathan Davidson did, to inquire into the mental status of those whose activities are associated with the governance of our country or our area? Those are not in support, not against, just points that might cross the minds of those who are now about to speak for a minute each. And this time we will speak in reverse order. We will hear first from Dr. Kimotho, then Dr. Chibanzi, then Dr. Horn, and finally Prof. Mathai. Dr. Kimotho, you go first. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In summary, what our argument alludes to is that governments can be successful and effective. By entrusting politics to politicians, we leverage their expertise and ensure accountability and maintain a structured and representative system of governance. This helps in creating a stable and effective environment that benefits society as a whole. Our role as citizens should be to elect the right people, demand accountability from our leaders, and participate in the public participation forums. My colleague, Dr. Chibanzi, alluded that politicians cannot be able to balance diverse interests, but I think if we vote in the right people, we can be able to get people who will forward our interests. For example, there have been professionals who have been elected, are in positions of power, but once they get there, they will forward their interests. Our role is to know who the right people are and to also impeach such people so that we are able to elect people who will take care of everyone's interests. Thank you. That's it from me.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very quick, sharp. Dr. Chibanji, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me just start with the point that my colleague Dr. Kimotho has said. I think in her expressing what she said, she's just supported our motion that we have to hold politicians accountable, and that's part of the governance framework. We cannot really separate politics from governance; they go hand in hand, and that process is more like a twin process. Just one example to make this clear in terms of, do you support a political side or not? This year, we've had a very big debate on Mogoka and Miraa in the country. We have two communities, one that is actually getting the effects of the Mogoka, and we see it as mental health practitioners, as psychiatrists, as psychologists. And then on one end, there's a community that is making a lot of money from it. And so the balance has to be us getting involved, because if we do not support that Mogoka and cat is harmful to the community, and given the research evidence that has been generated, then we allow those who are pursuing or pushing the agenda that it's not to actually impact the community and the society at large. So we must take a side at some point. We cannot say we will sit in the middle. We involve both sides. Whoever supports us, we go with them. Whoever does not support us, then we wait for next time, and we'll make sure that we actually support them. I think there was a question on expressing our opinions. Let us express our opinions as part of society. Constitutionally, we are allowed to do so. If we do so in organized manner, then it means that there's protection. We've done that through the unions, the civil societies are pointed out. Those ones are the places in which we use definitely to push this agenda. And I think just to finalize this point is that when it comes to the rule of law and even the constitution, healthcare is a right. In our constitution, it's actually enshrined in the constitution, the right to healthcare. And that right to healthcare has to be involved, us getting involved politically. Good examples is like the social health insurance model that has really caused catastrophic suffering in the population. And if we keep quiet and don't get involved in the process and pointing out that this law as designed like this is hurting people and leading to morbidities and mortality in the population, then we will not be playing our role. And that's why I submit that we must be involved in the politics for us to ensure that we have a better society. Remember the words that I said earlier when I started, that medicine is a social science and politics is nothing but medicine on a larger scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very, very excellent summary. We now go to Dr. Horn. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you to all the points from our audience. I'm really happy that so many people have participated. I think I have to take issue with our moderator in the most humble way possible to disagree on what politics is and what governance and administration is. Good governance and administration is something that needs to happen, and there's no question about that. But politics is actually about understanding our political system, which was inherited from a colonial government, which inherited that system from a church system, which favored the lords, the rich, the powerful, and oppressed poor people. It deprived them of food, water, shelter, the right to earn land. So if politics isn't about changing that and working for the needs of people who don't have food, water, and shelter, as Maslow's hierarchy of needs goes, then we're having a different conversation. So I would say none of us are experts in that. We have to have politicians to lead on that. And if they're not presenting policies that give people food, water, land, and the right to lift themselves up from poverty, then we're actually talking about our own self-interest. And we have to be very careful of that as doctors, educated, and moderately comfortably off people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You suffer no penalty for disagreeing with the moderator. No penalty whatsoever. Prof. Mathai, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to really thank Dr. Horn for supporting the motion all the way, from the beginning to the end. And then I do want to say that, in my opinion, you don't have to be a politician to be political. And the political is a sense of awareness, it's a sense of consciousness, involvement in the things that are happening, the human rights things, that knowing your rights and being involved in such activity. And the only way you can do this is not to shut your eyes from what is happening in the political scene. And being political is being able to analyze and make decisions and say, no, this is not what we want. You're there for the governance and whatever, but we are the ones who know what we need in our area. And the truth is that Dr. Kimozo cited the Nordic countries about good governance, everything is going so well, everybody is happy, and they are led by politicians. But the truth is, in these countries, they are socialized to political awareness. So even as they are growing, they know their rights. They know, you can't do that to me. You can't make this decision for me. And this makes a lot of difference. And I want to commend our educationists because what they did for the Gen Zs, as you might know, is use in literature books that are very political. And I hope they will continue with the Shamba la Wanyama, Kidagaa Kimemwozea, whatever, so that our children can grow up with that political consciousness. And that is the only way we can control politicians, because if we wait to remove them, the damage they will have done is too much, it's too expensive. So we can't say we voted you in, okay, we'll remove you, we'll impeach you, but you've already done damage to us. Thank you very much. Those are my concluding remarks.
I thank you very much. And now we go to the poll. Without further ado, I want to thank everybody who has participated. And the poll is there before you. You're required to vote. But as the vote is continuing, I have been told that Zawadi and Dr. Horn, there is a communication about I don't know what. Over to you, Neil and Zawadi, as we vote.
Thank you very much, moderator and chair, for this opportunity to jump into your program for today. Still, in regards to the debate, there's a lot of activity still ongoing surrounding our motion for today. However, I am here to give a formal invitation to all of you to Chiromo Hospital Symposium, which we'll be having on the 6th of March. And it is themed Emerging Issues and Frontiers in Mental Health. This event will be taking place at Chiromo Hospital Group Bustani branch in Nairobi. And it will also be accessible virtually. Hopefully, next week you should be able to register to attend and participate in this very interesting one-day symposium, which will offer unparalleled opportunities to engage with a diverse range of experts, researchers, practitioners, as we look at groundbreaking advancements and pressing challenges in mental health science. So the key topics that we have will be neuroscience, digital health innovations, policy development, and global mental health trends. We are currently accepting abstracts, and you can find our posters on our social media platforms, and they're in circulation in various other modes and channels of communication. So do not miss this opportunity. Be at the forefront of shaping the future of mental health. Asanteni. And thank you, moderator and chair.
Yes, Neil, do you have any comment before we know whether you have won or been defeated completely?
No, I think Zawadi's covered everything, and I'm thrilled that we're making progress with the conference planning.
Thank you very much. Okay, Zawadi,
So we had a poll on our socials, and the polls on the socials and the polls that we have right now are more or less similar. So the yes, politics, those in support of the motion, politics is too hot a topic to be left to politicians, stand at 77 in our current poll, and those who are opposed stand at 22%. In the earlier one, it was more or less the same. So, oh, wait, the numbers are still continuing to raise. So
This is 210 for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I think you should try and conclude it before we drop off.
Okay. So, yeah, so those in support have it for today, both in the older poll as well as in the current poll.
What are the numbers?
Currently, we are standing at 78% to 22%. That is post-debate. With the earlier one that was done, it stood at 65.
So it's getting worse for those who are. Thank you very much, Zawadi. Yeah. Okay, all that remains for me to say is thank you very, very much. I think we are now taking a break from CME activities until the new year. Allow me to extend to you my very, very best wishes for Christmas and the new year. And we hope to see you all with a new menu of CME activities in the new year. To our expert participants, Prof. Mathai, Dr. Chibanzi, Dr. Horn, and Dr. Kimotho, thank you very much for your participation. This is a very, very, very important conversation. And I thank you all very much. Have a very good day and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.